kind of professory, especially as I shuffle the deck here, okay? I have to start with a minor uh, history lesson, right? And it's a history that many of us haven't been privy to, right? But follow me, okay? So, once upon a time, 1619, everybody know that year? 1619? What happened in 1619? This was the start of U.S. slavery in the United States, okay? So what was going on at the time was they started this slave trade, right? And with this slave trade, they started bringing captive people from African, what we identify as African lands, to these lands and others. And when they got here, right, the people that were already settled here was saying, that's evil, that's immoral. What on earth are you all thinking to try to establish such a system here? Now, these are people who we identify as white today, right? Even having this reaction, right? And what a lot of the history books haven't really explained or showed to us is that the system was breaking down. Slavery was actually failing dramatically, right? They didn't have popular opinion, so they weren't getting that money, and they were losing lots of money because the system was failing. No one was with it. Now, what happens when we need to sell a product? What do? We market. And so that's what they did, right? They went to the universities, right? And they said, hey, we need you all to prove that this group of people are not fully human, right? This is where the 3/5 human thing came from, right? They said, we need you to prove that these folks aren't fully human, right? And that they're partial human, right? And so they started off with a goal already, right? The goal was already set. The conclusion was already made before any of these pseudo-scientific practices happened, right? So they started, measuring legs and brain colors and all of these things. And, it was a lot of fake science. None of it was legitimate, of course, right? But what they came up with were these categories, right? Mongoloid, they call it the Negroid, the Caucasoid, right? This is where the term Caucasian comes from, actually, right? Not necessarily just the Caucasus Mountains, but from the Caucasoid. And what the Caucasoid means is superior race, okay? And the Negroid is the inferior race, obviously, right? And then you have the hybrid, okay? And this was a mixed race folks, okay? So they came up with these categories, right, with their fake science, and then they made these, this hierarchy, right? And then for the first time in history, we had race, right? So they created race. And so race was then how we talk about as this social construct, right? Follow me. The social construct. Everyone understand what a social construct is, right? It's just something simply that was created by the society, nothing biologically or inherently real. It's an idea that gets manifested by us, right? So this is the idea of race. Before this, there was nothing, there was like no black, no white, no brown, no other. This was not in existence at all, okay? And so they created this system of race, this idea, right, so that they could justify the slave system, the slave system that was failing at the time. And so when this system, right, had been justified, I'm like, oh, they're not fully human right now. They're not fully human, so we can do what we want to do with them. And then just like that, with this brilliant marketing plan, right, slavery hit the jackpot, right? It was up, it was successful, and it was successful for many years to come. So, one of the implications of that is then that race, including your blackness, was a traumatic creation. It was a traumatic event. The events of race itself was a traumatic event because it was solely invented so that they can justify the slave trade. Okay, are you following? And so it wasn't until they created race, right, marked people Negroid or black today. Thank you so very much. Thank you. And then, fast forward today, we have mass incarceration. You see? And so, one of the so for folks that don't know, skin color and things like this, the main theory is that people have different colored skins because they were in different places. So if you were, just say, in Africa for a long period of time, you develop dark skins to protect yourself from the sun, right? Whereas if you were in other, hemispheres where you had less sun, then you had lighter skin so that you can soak up more vitamin D, right? This is essentially why we have different shades of skin color, right? So we created this idea, right, this social construct, just like any other social construct, gender, right, class, religion, so on and so forth. But this one has remained fairly static, okay? And one of the ways that it remains static is not simply by how we, by the racist systems that are in place, right? Because it has spread to every single system that you can name. There is nothing that race and racism hasn't touched, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's family, whether it's media.